Donnie, what's going on? How you doing today? Welcome, welcome. If you guys can hear me nice and clear, give me a thumbs up in the chat. And also let us know where you're coming from. Where you joining us from today? What's going on, Delano? Welcome, Sanas, Crystal. Oh yeah, Delano, Donnie, right out of Jamaica. Trust everything is going great down there for you all. Uganda in the house. It's been a while since I've gone live, so I figured, why not? Chris from out of Virginia, how's it up there? Hopefully not too hot. Crystal, you're in the Caribbean as well? That's awesome. Which island? Rainy up in Virginia, huh? It's been rainy down here in Florida as well. I guess the whole East Coast is getting it. Travelin is also from Jamaica. Nice, a lot of Jamaica in the house. Germany. Welcome. Malawi, Barbados. Oh, Barbados. Nice. Saw Dennis Ruston on keys on YouTube. That's cool. I don't think I've seen him on YouTube. Yana from out of the Big Apple, New York. Welcome. So while I give the others another minute or so to, jump on the live, those who are already here, start thinking about some questions that you potentially have for me. Write them down if you want to do that right now so you don't forget. I'm going to be taking questions shortly. But for now, start thinking about what question I can realistically help you with today. And remember, the purpose of this live is to provide practical tips, explain certain theoretical concepts, right? So we're talking about, per question, we have about 2-3 minutes for me to dive into each question. So when you're crafting your question or the solution you're looking for, keep that in mind that we have limited amount of time in how deep I can go with certain questions. I want to get through as many questions as possible. And also, I want, for those of you who are not aware, I want to, in a bit, talk a little bit about Gospel Piano Charts app that you see me have on the screen right here. I've gotten a lot of questions over the past few weeks about the app, what it does, how it works. And I also wanted to take some time to just sort of go over some of the features and who it's really designed for. It's really an awesome app for those of us who need to learn a lot of gospel songs and learn them quickly. So we're going to be talking about that in a bit as well. With that said, how's y'all summers going? How's summer going? Any summer plans? Oh, Flock's also from New York. Where in New York you from, Flock? I got a cousin who still lives up in New York. Africa, Tanzania, welcome. We got a nice international crowd here in the house. Currently we have about 32 people on the live. So what you can do as well is share out the live. You know, tap that little arrow you see by the live there and just click share. You can share it on your Facebook, drop it in a text, you know, post it wherever you can post links. Get some more like-minded folks in here. Welcome from the UK, Flex. Good to have you here. Oh, Buffalo, New York. So with that said, I want to open up now for some few questions. So who got the first question? I'll take a few questions and then I'm going to pause. We're going to talk a little bit about the Gospel Piano Charts app and answer some questions around that as well. So kick it off with your question. As always, make the questions clear and concise. Because if I have to guess about what you're trying to ask, it means I'm not going to be able to provide the best information for you. And while you guys are gathering your question, something just came to mind based on a conversation I was having over the past few weeks. And one of it is about hand independence. A lot of you, especially more on the beginner side, have asked about hand independence over the years. What it is, how do I get better at it? The ability to play two different things, right, in the hands is what people often refer to as hand independence. So when you see me do So that's really, when people talk about hand independence, what they're referencing. And I want to address this because there's a lot of misconception around hand independence. It's not something that I can just show you and you get it. It's not based around theory. Like I can show you and I can go, hey, this is how you can voice a 13th chord. And you'd be like, okay, I get it. C in the left hand, G, B flat, then E in the right hand, A and D. Boom. Just like that, I can show you how to play and voice a chordal voicing 13th chord, and you get it. That only take a few seconds. When it comes to technical applications of how we use our hands, we're literally talking about muscle memory. We're talking about developing muscle memory in the hands, right? It's not something I can just show you and then walk away and all of a sudden you start doing that. It's really a skill that developed over time through diligent and dedicated practice. If you truly want to develop hand independence, we got to go back to basics. Let me fix my mic real quick. Sorry about that. I could hear my mic feeding back in my ears. Anyhow, before we can talk about doing all those fancy left hand, this, that, you see, we got to go back to basics. And what do I call basic? Basic technique development. Before we can first separate the hands to do two different things, we first have to get comfortable with doing the same thing in the hands, right? So stuff like, so I'm playing the same lick but in both hands. So we first have to get comfortable doing things together within the hands. And the way you begin to start practice that is with your chords, your scales, your arpeggios, blocked and broken chords. And I know some of you might be rolling your eyes right now. Oh, back to the scales. Yes, it's that deep. You can't really develop a solid hand independence until you learn how to do these exercises comfortably. So what we talk about scales, the first basic one is hands together. Major scales. You want to be able to play your major scales 4-octave, ascending and descending at a fairly comfortable speed. And you want to be able to do that with all 12 major scales, because that's how you're developing the technique of the hands. Arpeggios. And you want to be able to go through all your diatonic chords. So you see I did major, minor, diminish, right? You got to get comfortable working your arpeggios. Again, ideally 3 to 4 octave. Then we have our blocked chords, going through all the inversions. And again, all the qualities of the blocked chords. And then we need to also do the same thing broken. And listen when I say, you might think I ain't going to do that. There's got to be an easier way. There is not. If you truly want to develop hand independence, you have to go through that door. All of us did. I spent years doing these exercises and gradually increasing my speed. There is no other way. Trust me on this. If you think there's another way, you're wasting your time. If you've been struggling with hand independence for years, start doing this. I guarantee you in 6 months, your hand's gonna feel completely different. Yes, the exercises are boring. They're monotonous. And that's why a lot of people don't like them. But I like to equate it to vegetables. As a child, we all have been forced to eat our vegetables. None of us likes to eat vegetables when you're 5, 6 years old. But we had to eat it. We just had to, I remember my dad used to feed me these weird vitamins that taste gross. And for those of us from the Caribbean, you're familiar with the concept of a washout, right? Before school, you had to take a washout, drink some Epsom salts or some bush tea, as we'd say. None of us like that stuff. And we spent years fighting our parents from having to eat and drink that stuff. But now that we're grown, we understood why. It's the same thing with the chords and the scales and the block chord. It's boring. I'll be the first to tell you. But it's the only way to develop the skill that you're then going to use to be able to play all the fancy musical stuff. Now, once you learn how to do those exercises that I just listed, there are other stuff you can work on that further helps with hand independence. But it doesn't make sense even mentioning that stuff until we get the foundation down. All right, so that's the best way to address the hand independent issue. All right, let me take a few questions from the chat. First one, Flex says, do you know Ethel Carey Austin? Can you replicate her style? Unfortunately, I do not know her. I'm not familiar with that name. Well, as it relates to style replication, I like to think of style replications like accents. Everybody's probably know one or two per people who can fake accents very well. And the way those people develop that skill is just through listening carefully and practicing the ins and outs of that accent. right? So style is based around the same thing, right? If you want to develop a certain type or style of playing, you just need to consume a lot of that type of music. Listen to the different things that make that style unique. Ideally, it's going to be based on how they use rhythms, how they use accents, how they use chords, and how they use melodies. Because those are all the tools we have to work with. All right. Silas said, do me some gospel runs in G flat. That's too broad, right? And the why I say it's too broad, because I could just do any random runs, but then what does that mean in the greater context of a song or a progression? You want to make sure you're practicing those things that's tied to songs, right? So when you're practicing improv, licks, lines, and runs, it's better to do those things in the context of a song. So if we're doing, how great is our God, sing with me, how great is our God, all will sing, how great is our God, how great is our God, is our God, all will sing, how great is our God. So the progression we're doing here, we're on the 1, 5, 6. And then have 2, 5 passing to the 4. How great is our God. How great turnaround is our God. How great. Our God. There's so many things you can do. You know, when it comes to licks, lines, and runs, it's easy to get lost down the rabbit hole, because I mean, it's endless possibilities, and then we always have to take into account context. Like, you know, is what I'm doing appropriate for the context of the environment? You know, it's a very slippery slope. So I try to do those in a more confined, controlled environment, which is the context of a song. Let's take one more question, and then we're going to talk about Gospel Piano Charts app. Yana says, for those of us who practice at home, what would you recommend be touched on in every single practice? Now, I talk about this, Yana, in my program over at pianolessonwithwarren.com, the practice path. And I'm going to log in right now. Let's see if I can show you guys this. I like to talk, I break it down in what I call the category method, which is every day when you sit at the piano, you want to do something technique related. Now, what is that? We already talked about scales, chords, like scales, block chords or broken chords, and arpeggios. Those are what we call technique related activities. That's how you strengthen your fingers. That's how you work on your accuracy. It's through those exercises. And you don't want to spend a lot of time on them because it's something you do every day. So my recommendation is like 4 to 8 minutes on something technique related, and then you move on. The goal isn't trying to practice perfection, because it's a steady process, a steady growth process, right? So you do about 4 to 8 minutes on those exercises. And then you want to do a little bit of ear training as well. Now, all of these don't need to be done back to back to back. You can stretch it out across the day, right? We're talking about within the 24 hours, what are the things you would like to get through? And so you can weave it within your day. We want to do a little bit of ear training, and this is what we call active listening. For those of you who are familiar with my ear training app, having an app that you can use for ear training practice is great because it means you can do it everywhere and anywhere. Ideally, you don't need the keyboard to be able to, you don't have to be at the piano to practice ear training exercise. In fact, I would recommend you don't do ear training exercise at the keyboard. Why? To practice the other exercises like chords, scales, songs, we have to physically be at the keyboard. And given our day, we don't always have time to be at the keyboard. So we want to make sure that we're isolating those exercises for when we're at the keyboard. So everything else that can be done away from the piano, we want to do that so that when the little time we may have to sit at the piano, we can just then dedicate that to the things done at the piano. So ear training, for the most part, a lot of it can be practiced away from the piano through stuff like my active ear training app. And the goal of ear training exercise is just to begin to start to understand what we're doing, right? What we're hearing, put names to things. And this is another one that takes time. It's a slow process, which is why we want to do it every day. Let me see if I can quickly share my screen here with you guys. Let's see. You might see a black screen for the most part, but I'm going to try to see if I can share my windows with you. Give me a minute. Testing. Yes, I still got audio going through. Let me see if I can pull this up right here. All right, hold on. All right, hopefully you guys can see that on your screen. When we talk about the practice path, this is what we're talking about, right? And for those of you who are in my program over at pianolesswithwarren.com, this is predominantly what you're going to be working with. And I'm going to go over to my sessions. So you can see this is how our sessions are typically outlined. So when you ask what to practice every day, this is the categories. A little bit of ear training, right? Some scales, some chords, some arpeggios, some progressions so we can get better at our progressions, a song. Definitely want to make sure that we're working on song. And we also have a theory category where we work on different theoretical aspects. So this is how you want your practice to be set up so that you're touching each of these every day. Now, the way we have it set up is that things go progressively. So we have level 1 through 5. We have different modules that focus on different topics. And then we have different sessions within those modules. And each session gives you an objective as to what you should expect at the end or what you should accomplish at the end of the lesson. And then we also have quizzes that goes with the different lessons to help reinforce what you're learning. So that's what we have. That's what I offer over at pianolessonwithwarren.com. So the things that I talk about here on YouTube is what we preach over in the program. And this is also how my personal practice sessions have been structured for the last 20 years. For you to be a competent musician, you need to be firing on all cylinders. And those cylinders were ear training, scales, chords, arpeggios, progressions, songs, and theory. We need to be learning about all of those 7 buckets all the time, right? And like I said, you can vary the different amount of time you address to each of these, but every day we need to be doing something in these realms. You might not be able to accomplish everything every day, get through all of these categories every day. That's fine. As long as we're aware that we're addressing all these categories, that's how you become fluent, and that's how you become rounded as a pianist. All right, Yana, I believe that was your question. A question from Nothing Now here says, what are your top gospel songs that every player should know how to play? I don't have top gospel songs. The reason for this is because there are just too many. There are so many good songs out there. It's hard to narrow it down to 3. Because when we say top songs, first we need to have a criteria. What about these songs, why we call them the top songs? What's the purpose and the function of these songs? Or what would a typical student gain from these 3 top songs to make them a top song? And I don't have any such criteria, because for everything that you'll need to learn to become a very good pianist, or to become as good as you want to, there's going to be hundreds of songs that can fulfill that criteria. So there really isn't, I can't narrow it down to even 10 that I would say you got to learn. And so then we have to look at it through a different lens. I like to think of it as occasions, right? If you're a church musician and you play regularly in church, then look at the structure of a service. Communion. Every church does some aspect of communion. You need to know at least 1 or 2 communion songs. So it's better to look at, okay, top songs, look at them based on categories. I usually like to start with the ones that are most popular. So if you're trying to build a list of powerful gospel songs, first start with devising the categories. You need communion songs or resurrection songs, right? Easter songs, that would be a category. And then just go on YouTube and type in popular Easter songs. The ones with the most views that are filters at the top are going to be the popular ones. Put them on the list. They're popular for a reason. That's why they have millions of views. So you say, all right, I'm going to pick 2 from that category to work on. Christmas is another one. Christmas is going to be a few months away, right? What are, go to YouTube, popular Christmas songs. It's going to be the standards, you know, the ones that we've been hearing since we were little. Those are probably going to come up. But again, pick 2 or 3 from that list based on views and say, man, I should probably learn these because they're what people want to learn. And so that's the best way to go about identifying, you know, like if you want to start building a repertoire list, a list of songs. We want to learn popular songs, but we also want to learn songs that functions for events. Because if not, you just end up learning random songs that nobody knows or doesn't fit the events that you're going to be playing for. Prayer songs, like songs that are prayerful, altar call type songs, right? So we look at different categories that fit the environment. And then we go on YouTube, that works as a great filtering source, and type in those exact phrases. Popular worship songs or popular altar call songs. And then just scroll the list. Some of them will jump out at you and you're like, oh, this is a good one. I've heard this one multiple times. And you start from there. So that's how I typically go about learning songs. But again, I've been doing this for so long now. I know a lot of songs. Kendra says, how can you enhance your chord progression? 4-6-5-1, song example, Victory Belonged to Jesus by Todd Delaney. So 4-6-1-5. By His stripes ye are healed. That's the verse, I believe. Da, 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 da. By His strength are healed. I'm trying to remember the chorus. Victory belongs to Jesus, Jesus. Victory belongs to Him. I can't remember the chorus. Anyhow, when you say spice up your or enhance your progressions, Kendra, first thing I like to tell people is look at your diatonic extensions. All right, so if I'm playing a 4, instead of playing just a straight triad, start adding the 9s, right? Next up, you can say, what if I add the 7? Now you have a major 9 chord. Victory belongs to Jesus. Victory belongs to Him. So diatonic extensions. Add 9s. So that's how we can start explore the chord harmonically. See? Minor 9. All these chords, I'm in the key of C, by the way. All these chords are diatonic extensions. Victory belongs to Him. Belongs to Jesus. I still can't remember the chorus, but I'm just giving you ideas. So you notice the tools that I'm relying on to make my playing sounds good is not just the diatonic extensions, but broken chords. So, right, I like to do a lot of stuff with broken chords, especially when you're doing these type of worship songs that doesn't need a lot of passing chords. You need to rely heavily on your use of rhythms. So look how I'm using my rhythms. Victory belongs to Him. Victory belongs to Jesus. Victory belongs to Him. Right? And when you're using rhythms, I like to think of rhythms percussively, meaning you think of a drummer. Those we call fills, right? In drumming, when they break away from their standard patterns and they do fills. Within those fills that they do, they have a variety of options. How they want to distribute the beat, the speed at which they distribute the beat, the type of rhythms they're using, whether they're introduced to crash or not, all of that is improvisation for the drummer. It's the same thing we do on the piano. We got a standard progression. By His stripes, we are healed. Think of this as our standard beat. Da, 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 da. Now we're going to bring fills. Da. Back to the groove. Back to a fill. Right, so that's the way I really think about it. And I think probably because my very first instrument was the drums. For those of you who don't know, I started off playing drums and predominantly hand drums, congos. Because, you know, I'm from the Caribbean, so it was a lot of Congo drums, and that's really how I got my start. I was an okay drummer. I'm not going to say I was, you know, because we're talking about when I was like 15, 14 years old. I was into Congo drumming, so my sense of rhythm and timing is pretty good. And that's where I learned about embellishments. It's from the drums. So when I naturally started learning piano, I sort of saw it through that lens of just as how I would embellish by changing my rhythms on the drums. I just do the same thing on the keyboard, but I'm using different notes while maintaining timing. So that's really the best way to begin to start to explore these things. Now, before I continue, I want to talk to you guys about Gospel Piano Charts app. And I've gotten so many questions over the last few months, or few weeks rather, about this app. And so I want to take a few minutes to answer any questions on it, but also walk you through what it does and the importance of this app. This app was born out of my personal need, because I play in church every week. And we do some very hard-hitting songs. And so I had to sit down and transcribe a lot of these chords every week. Sometimes it takes 1 to 2 hours transcribing, learning songs. And so I figured, if this is so time-consuming and taxing for me, I can't imagine for someone who's not as good at transcribing songs, having to play in church and trying to learn all these chords. So all I did was start digitizing these transcriptions that I've been doing over the years. And that's how Gospel Piano Charts app was born. So here, when you open the app, this is what it looks like. And here you're seeing all the current song titles. We have quite an extensive list, and it's a list that's updating every day. Because like I said, as soon as I learn a new song, I digitize the chords and they're added here. But it's not just a digital version of a songbook where you just add chords to. It's interactive, meaning for students, you can use it to learn new chords and learn chord voicing. So for example, let's take this song right here, the Judith McAllister, Hallelujah, You're Worthy. So when I open it, this is what the users see. And now we have it synced to the YouTube video. So you get to hear it in context and see the chord change, right? I'm going to swap from the YouTube video and go to this piano MP3. Why? Because I don't want the live to be copyright strike if I play the YouTube video. But you can see right here, we have it nicely structured. Intro, verse, chorus, all of that stuff. Now, for my beginners, intermediate, who are not so good with reading chord charts, you're looking at these and you're like, okay, I see C minor 7. I'm not quite sure how to voice it. You just tap on it. And you see down below the piano showing you how I played it. You should also note that these charts are created from direct transcription of my own playing. So just as I play it, we have it transcribed exactly. So you get to see how I voice all my chords. If I click on here, C7 sharp, 5 sharp, 9, you see how I voiced it in the context of the song. Now, if you want to hear it, you press play. So you not only get to see the chords, but to hear how I play it. And if you're wondering, wow, that was pretty quick. Can we slow it down? Absolutely. You see where it says 100%? That's the tempo. So if I want to hear it at 50%, I click 50, or you can type in your own personalized number. And then when you click play, now, the slower you go, the more distorted the audio is going to get. That's just how it works when we manipulate audio. And for those of you who have some experience with reading sheet music, you can view all of this in score format as well. If we click the settings right here, and where it says notation, if I click the green button to unhide, you can see everything in notation format in how I played it. And so you can play it by exactly. If you want to see if there's any particular runs that I use and any of that stuff, you want to see the individual notes, you can do that. And the beauty about this, you can export this as well as a PDF, right? So you're not restricted to just viewing it inside the app. The app allows you to be interactive. So you can, tap, see the chord, you can hear the playback, you can transpose, slow down, and all that stuff. But then after that, you can export the PDF. So if I come back here and hide notation to just view the chords, and I said, well, this is in A flat, but what if I want to play the song in G? Because I can't play in A flat, or I got to play this Sunday, but the singer is singing it half step lower. You come here and you see where it says transpose, and you just slide this slider down to G, and now you're seeing the entire chord chart in the key of G, and then I can come here and export this PDF if I want, where it says print. Right? And as mentioned, this is synced to the YouTube video, so you hear it in the context of the way it was performed on the original track. And so what Gospel Piano Chart does, it not only allows you to learn all these cool chords and voicing, but you're learning all of these popular gospel songs in their entirety. And one of the best ways to strengthen your vocabulary, to understand theory and progressions, is through learning lots of songs. Except now you're getting accurate transcription of all your favorite gospel songs. Because that was one of the issues I have. Even though I can transcribe very well, I don't always like to do it, right? Especially when I'm in a pinch. And every time I go online and I try to find chords for some of these songs, I can't. There's no transcription of them. Or if there's a YouTube video of somebody teaching it, it's either incomplete or they're teaching the wrong chords. So again, this was a need born out of just being able to provide gospel charts to people who want to learn gospel songs, learn the chords, see the voicing, seeing all of this stuff. Now, at the time, Gospel Piano Charts is available on iPad, as you can see. It's also available for phones, right? It's a mobile app. Later on, in the near future, we're going to be creating a desktop version for those who want to see it on their big desktop screen, right? But the beauty about like Apple devices, you can mirror to your TV and all that stuff if you want. But for now, it's a mobile device. The goal is to have every gospel song known to man updated or loaded into this. And currently we have over 100 charts, and you can see it's listed in alphabetical order, right? Gospel Piano Charts. Right now you can test out the app for $1, right? Over at gospelpianocharts.com. If you want to see the full catalog of songs, you can go to gospelpianocharts.com as well, and you see where it says song catalog, and you can see all the songs we have. And one of the beauty about being a subscriber to the app is you get to make song requests, because that's how I'm really deciding what songs to add to the app, is based on user requests. People submit requests. So when you're in the settings, you come here, you see where it says help and support song suggestions or your account. So you can just suggest songs. And because we're moving so fast in adding new songs, when I have to add a new song, I go to the list that people submit, and I pick a song from there. And so that's how I'm deciding what songs get added. It's purely based on user feedback. Now, if you're wondering what's the cost beyond the $1 trial, it's $15.99 per month after the trial. And it gets you access to all the song charts. Like I said, it's a great resource for you to learn all your gospel songs. So that's gospelpianocharts.com. If you're not familiar with the app, if this is new to you, I wanted to take a minute to explain and explore questions that people may have about this app, because I've gotten a lot of questions and people are just like, wait, there's a new app, or how do I access it? Is it desktop? Is it mobile? I've gotten a lot of questions. So I wanted to introduce you guys to that so you can let me know if you have any questions. And if you really want to improve, like I said, learn gospel piano well, a big part of that is learning a lot of songs. I know over 1,000 songs. Yes, I know over 1,000 gospel songs. And through that learning process is how I know so much about music. Yes, while I do have a degree in music, I can tell you I have learned a lot more since I graduated college over a decade ago than I have when I was a music student. So, and the way I learned all of this is just through constantly learning songs and learning the correct voicing, learning the chords that's used in the song. So Gospel Piano Charts meant for those folks. Now, one of the questions I've also gotten is, hey, if I'm subscribed to pianolessonwithwarren.com, the courses, do I also get the app? Unfortunately, no, because it's its own product, right? And people have also asked, are the songs in the app available in your main program over at pianolessonwithwarren.com? Unfortunately, no. Again, it's a separate product, right? So you can get both or you can get one. But if your goal is purely song-based, I want to just learn a lot of songs and a lot of chords, Gospel Piano Charts really for you. All right, now I'm gonna keep on answering questions, but if you have any questions about the app, post it in the chat as well, and I'll get to that. Question from Crystal. Crystal says, I'm completely new to accompaniment. The hardest part is how do you know what chords people are singing? I pick up 1, 4, 5, but people getting all sorts of chords. Also, I'm 12. Oh my. Crystal, you're 12 years old. So Crystal, let's answer this. So we're not just picking up random chords out of thin air. This is where Gospel Piano Charts app comes in. We learn all these chords through learning a lot of songs. That's the point. And so when somebody starts singing, we're pulling from that vocabulary of chords that we've learned. That's how we know what these chords are, but then the function of these chords. It's just through learning song. The good news is you're starting early. At 12, I couldn't even tell you where middle C was, because I started music very late. I was in my late teens when I started piano. So you're in the right place, Crystal, and just start learning songs. Learn as many songs as you can. That's the way you get to all of this stuff. All right. A question from Donnie. He says, I want to see the exercise again. Will this live be posted? Yes, the live will be available as soon as I end it. You'll be able to rewatch it. But then also, Donnie, I have a lot of videos right here on YouTube already that covers the scales, block chords, broken chords, arpeggios, all of this stuff already. So once you go through my playlist, the technique playlist, right, you'll see a lot of these exercises. And Delano says, I'm a beginner, must be, okay, intermediate must be harder, and advanced must be fine. When I want to show piano skills, I'm not sure if I understand that question, Delano. I'm not sure if I understand the question. See if you can concise that down a little clearer. Trevon says, after learning the scales, major scales chords, what is the next step? Now, if you're talking about technique, because technique never ends, we just keep working on technique. So the scales, chords, block chords, all of that, it's not that we learn them and then we put them on the shelf. The goal isn't just to learn them. In fact, learning them is the easiest part. The goal is to be able to play them and play them fast, right? So we talk about practicing your arpeggios like this. If you can play your arpeggios like that, that means you know them. Now you need to get them to this speed. So what you're working on after you learn them is speed. The way you work on speed is gradual, incremental. You practice to a metronome or to a backing track. You start with a comfortable speed and you gradually increase every other day, every couple of days, every week, till you get them to the speed where you can play like that. So technique building is always going to be something we're working on. But once we learn these exercises, then we're working on speed. Now, that's just for the technique bracket. We talk about the song bracket as well. You want to be constantly learning songs. As many songs as possible. Don't focus on perfection when you're learning songs. That's one of the biggest misconceptions, biggest mistake a lot of people make. They spend 6 months trying to learn one song. That's irrelevant. There are way too many songs out there for you to spending that long on a song. You don't, right? So you can learn a song 40%, 30%, 60%, and then move on to another song. Even if you're just learning bits and pieces of songs, learn as many. The skill you want to develop, that pattern recognition, only comes through exposure. So you need to be exposed to many chord progressions, many keys, many songs. And then that perfection that you're looking for will start to get better because you start seeing and hearing the pattern, which means you start learning faster. But if you can't play 10 songs on the piano yet, you got work to do. Start learning. See if you can learn 10 songs within the next 30 days. Start with simple songs. Learn the songs, move on. Don't worry about trying to retain it either, because you're not. I have forgotten more songs than I have learned. The beauty is I have developed the skill of learning songs, so if I need to relearn a song, I can learn it like that. And that's where you want to get to. Great question. Kuda says, what is the science behind player chord progressions? Oh, prayer chord progression. Sorry. I struggle coming up with chord progressions during long prayer sessions at church. How do you have endless directions? Now, personally, when I'm playing prayer-related chords, in my experience and opinion, you don't need to come up with a lot of chords. The goal of prayerful chord progression is to set ambience. If you're constantly changing the tonality and the chords and the qualities of the chords, you kind of lose the essence. Part of setting the tone is we need that repetitive sound, that ambience. It's how we use dynamics. It's how we use layers, right? So I can start like, so all I've been doing so far is playing C to F. But the way I'm doing it emotionally and the way I'm using my different registers, the way I'm using my upper registers and the melodic lines. It's like you're trying to set a mood. So when you're playing prayerful chords, the goal isn't to have a bunch of constant chord progression. In fact, that's distracting. Your sole focus to be setting the mood. And so every decision you're making is based on that. You're reading the room, you're following the energy, right? You're following the pastor or whoever is leading the prayer. You're following their energy because sometimes they're going to build and then you're going to want to build with them. And then they get quieter. So you're watching the moods, all about setting the ambience. You really want to take the attention from you and focus on you're creating an ambience so people can do their thing. The worship can flow. If we get too internal, worrying about our own sound and my own chords, then you lose focus of what's happening around you. And now you're making more egotistical decisions about trying to sound flashy and fancy, and that's not going to be the goal. So prayerful type of playing doesn't require a lot of chords. If there's any part of the service that I would say you can kind of do more chordal experimentation is doing the talk music section, where it's not about prayerful, it's not about altar call. You know, they're just talking and you're doodling sort of behind them. That's where you can kind of explore, right? can that's where you can, because again you're just creating sort of a little bit of environment so the room just doesn't sound empty. But even then you got to be careful, because you don't want to be so flashy to the point where it starts to distract from whoever is speaking. But from my experience, that's where I'm usually more exploratory, a little bit more busy. It's during talk music, not the prayerful stuff. Now, to answer another part of your question, you say, how do you know what chords to use? And again, it goes back to songs. The more songs you learn, the wider your harmonic vocabulary gets. And so when we sit to play, you're really just regurgitating all these chords that you've learned over the months and years. And we're stringing them together in ways that we're trying to be creative. So you realize the importance of learning songs. It becomes your vocabulary. Think about it like a language, right? If I didn't speak English, there's no way I could have held this live in English to explain all of this stuff to you. I'd be struggling because I don't have the vocabulary to say what I'm thinking. Many of you right here in the chat probably speak 2, 3 different languages. How did you learn these additional languages? You first had to learn the vocabulary. How did you learn the vocabulary? You either read books in that language, you watch a lot of TV shows in that language, you listen to a lot of music in that language. In either way, for you to learn that second language, you had to consume content, whether it's in the form of books, movies, audio, classroom. You had to consume a lot of that content to build your vocabulary so you can then speak that language. Music is the same. You want to get better at chords and chord progressions, you need to be learning a lot of songs. And this is why you need apps like Gospel Piano Charts, because it has hundreds of songs, hundreds of keys, hundreds of chord progressions, and it's going to teach you all of that stuff that you can then rely on later, right? Let's take a look at some more questions. Quiz, see what the Lord has done in the key of G flat kindly. Well, I'm not sure I know what song that is, Silas. User 43 says, how do I become smoother with transitions in worship? Well, define transitions. Because I've heard people use transitions to mean just moving between chords. In other words, they use transitions to mean progressions. Also, I've heard people use transitions between songs. Now, that's the one I'm familiar with. When I hear the word transitions, I'm thinking about how you go from one song to the other. And that's a tricky one. There is no one way to do it. Depending on what type of song comes next, depending on the key, depending on is there an intro. There's so many factors that goes into what we define as a transition. So I would need like a specific context, Toya, to be able to answer this question. Oh, not Toya, user. Toya says, Tayo says, what are some of the things that we as gospel musicians from classical pianists? I believe that question's incomplete, so I'm not quite sure what the comparison you're asking on gospel musicians versus classical pianists. See if you can re-ask that question for me, Toya. And we got OL says, though I know the theory to passing chords, implementing this in a live session is sometimes not easy. Not that easy because everything moves very fast. What's the best approach to this? There's only one approach to this. Before you can do anything public, you need to be comfortable doing it private. Meaning, if it's not something you've practiced, there's no way you're going to be able to pull it off publicly. Whatever song you're going to be playing, come Sunday, you need to be able to sit and play it as if you were playing it in church. Practice where you're going to put your passing chords, where you're going to put your lick. You want to work out all those things meticulously before Sunday. And you want to be able to do it at the tempo that you're going to be doing it come Sunday. That's it. That's how it works. So when you see me playing in videos, almost nothing I do is spontaneous. It's either something I worked out before started recording, or it's something I've played so many times that I can do it on the spot in any key. In either way, to become fluent with any particular skill, it's something you have to practice immensely at home first. Figure out the fingering, the timing, all of that stuff. If you haven't figured out and do all of that beforehand work, you're not going to be able to do it in a live setting. In fact, you're going to be guessing, and that's when it's going to be disastrous. So you got to work these things out in advance. Now, the more of these things you work out in advance, after a while, it's going to become automatic, naturally. The more you do something, the more fluent you get, and then after a while, you may be able to do these things spontaneously, even if you hadn't particularly worked it out in that particular song, right? So when it comes to passing chords and all that stuff, it's not necessarily the theoretical understanding. In fact, the theoretical stuff is usually the easy stuff. It's the practical application where a lot of people get hung up. And the miscommunication there is people think because I understand it theoretically, right, then I should be able to just do it practically. And unfortunately, it doesn't work that way, right? We got to work it in our body. So I could look and be like, oh, I can do a 2-5 passing from going to F, right? So 2-5 passing would be G minor, C7, going to F major. You might understand that clearly, theoretically. But if you've never practiced it, there's so many unknowns. Chord voicing, how am I going to voice it? Timing, how am I going to play it in timing for it to work? And if you haven't done that part yet, you really haven't started the process of passing chords yet. The theoretical part is like 20%. 80% comes from the practice. So now I can go. Amazing grace, how sweet. I can do a 2-5-1 just like that on the spot because I've done that a million times already in so many different songs. I don't have to guess. I could just do it. Great question. Question from Crystal. Crystal says, what island are you from? I'm from Jamaica, Crystal. I'm a yardman just like all y'all. Yeah, man. But I've been living in the United States for about 16 years now. Cardoso, I'm not sure I know how to pronounce his full name. Mateos says, I don't speak English, but I love your work. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And by the way, I just learned, for those of you who your first language is not English, or for those of you who doesn't speak English at all, YouTube just rolled out this thing on my channel that all my videos now are translated into multiple different languages. So if you go to any of my videos, you click that little gear icon and you should see, let me see if I can do it right now. You click the little gear icon, you're gonna see, I think it says audio. And then when you click audio, you're gonna see the dub, just all the different languages that my videos dubbed in. I didn't do it, YouTube did it automatically. I think they're probably using some form of AI to translate all the videos into different languages. So I was playing with it and I was like, I could change my video to Korean and you could hear everything I'm saying in Korean. Now, I don't know how accurate the translation is because I only speak English. But just wanted to mention that for those of you who, because this was one of the questions I've gotten asked earlier in the YouTube days. People just like, hey, I speak French. is there a way to translate the videos in French? Or, obviously I didn't have the resources to do that then. So it's good that YouTube has rolled this out. So now every video I upload is automatically translated into like 25 different languages. So you can click and scroll to see which one, which language you speak. I definitely know that Portuguese and Spanish and French, Hindu, and some Asian related languages are, Mandarin and so on. So you guys can check that out. Delano says, how to show piano technique, hand independence, and chord imitation. I'm not sure what you mean by how to show piano technique. If you were at the beginning of the live, Delano, where I talk about how to develop hand independence, and again, it's a slow skill, and it's through constant and regular practicing of technique-related activities. Josh says, how do I improve chord extensions? You taught some in one of the tutorials. I can only see them in a few songs. Yeah, so chord extensions, there are two ways to learn chord extensions. One, through tutorial. Again, that's why, the app that I just mentioned, Gospel Piano Charts, that's why it's an amazing app, because it has hundreds of songs and you get to see all different extensions used. So that's one way to learn extensions. It's through tutorials, chord charts, learn it that way. The second is through exploring and experimenting. But this part comes later, because if you don't have any knowledge of extensions, then you don't have anything to explore with. But once you've learned a lot of chords, a lot of extensions through tutorials, through studying a lot of songs that I provide, either through Piano Lesson with Warren or Gospel Piano Charts, then you have a vocabulary of extensions that you can experiment with in songs, right? And I just demonstrated, like if I'm playing Amazing Grace, let's take another one. Let's say I'm doing, like, I love you, Lord, for your mercy never fails me all my days. See? I am held in your hands from the moment I wake up, extensions, till I lay my head, and I will sing of the goodness of God. Now that song in its original form doesn't have any extensions in it, but you can see I'm able to play it and add my own extensions, because I'm pulling from my vocabulary of, okay, if I'm playing a 6, I know these are the different extensions available to playing that 6. If I'm playing a 2, these are the different extensions. I can change the 2 also to a major, and I can extend it this way. So all of that stuff is coming from prior knowledge. I am not discovering it in the moment. I'm using prior knowledge, things that I already know, and I'm saying, how can I add it in this song? So again, you realize everything goes back to songs. That's the only way you're going to learn all these different chords and different extensions, is through learning a lot of songs. And why recreate the wheel? Why sit there trying to figure out the chords to all these different songs? If you're trying to transcribe all the songs on your own, especially the more advanced ones where you're going to learn the extensions, it's going to take too long. Might as well just find a resource that already has the right chords, and then you learn those chords. After a while, you'll develop the skill where you can transcribe them yourself. Toya says, can learn from classical musicians. If you're asking if you can learn from classical musicians, yes, but it depends on what you want to learn. Classical musicians going to teach you classical stuff. Gospel musicians going to teach you gospel musician stuff. Jazz musicians going to teach you jazz stuff. So it's important to know, what do you want to learn, right? If you want to learn mechanic, how to fix cars, you don't show up to an office that's teaching you how to build computers, right? Two different skill sets. So people who are people who are specialized in classical piano is not going to teach you about gospel and jazz, because that's not their field. But like I said, piano is the main instrument, so you can still learn from them, especially technique stuff, right? But again, it really depends on what you're trying to learn. I'm a big advocate of go where you want to learn the thing. If you want to learn how to speak Spanish well, don't go to a country that speaks Portuguese or French. Go to a Spanish-speaking country. You want to learn English, you go to an English-speaking country. So it's the same thing with piano and music. Whatever style you want to learn, consume that particular style of music. Seek out teachers that teach that specific type of music, right? Toyo says again, like, what can we learn from them? I don't know. What might be some ideas or specific techniques you can learn musically? All right, actually I do know, because I'm trained classically. My degree is in classical piano performance. I spent 9 years studying classical music, 4 years in Jamaica at a music institution, 4 years here in the United States at 5 at the University of Southern Maine. So my degree is in classical piano performance. What did I learn in those 9 years? I learned a lot about music structure, about how to interpret music to sound musical, all of that stuff, right? I also developed insane amount of technique. All my technique came from studying classical music, classical piano. And that's one of the things I'll tell you that classical players have the edge on. They're the masters of technique development, because to play classical piano, you have to have good technique. Do you now then need to go sign up with a classical piano teacher to get good technique? No. If your goal isn't to learn classical piano, you're kind of, one, you're not going to have fun with it. Two, you're wasting your time, because that's not what you want to learn. You might say, then Warren, you did it. I just wanted to get a degree. I wanted to get a degree in music. And at the time, the classical department was the strongest department. So I was like, I might go where all the best pianists are, which were the classical piano teachers. So I went there. At that time, I was young, 19 years old. I had no idea where music was going to take me, if I'm being honest, right? And so it's not like I had this all planned out. I didn't. All I knew was I want to learn music formally. I want to learn music professionally. And I want to have a degree. All of us can relate to that in your late teens. You know, everybody talk about the importance of having a degree back then. So for me, I wanted a degree in music, and I was like, when I graduate, I could probably teach music at a school, blah, 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 blah. That was going to be my career. That was the extent of my plan, right? But later on, I got deeper into gospel music. I got into some jazz. And I was like, I think I like the more jazzy style of playing, the gospel stuff, the play-by-ear stuff. I like that stuff. But again, I was already enrolled in a classical piano program, so I couldn't just quit. So I was like, I'm just going to see it through, right? So I graduated 4 years in Jamaica. Then I got a scholarship to come to the United States to do a second degree in classical piano performance. I had two options: go, get a second degree, or said no. Of course I was going to go. So I went, and again, I learned a lot. I learned a lot about the structure of music, you know. I learned about how to listen, because then I have to sit and listen to an orchestra for 45 minutes or an hour, which I've never had to do before. So it expanded my mind in focused listening, to listening intently. There's a lot of other sort of things I learned along the way, but the biggest takeaway was just my technique. The speed I have now in which I can play, and the accuracy and all that really came from the background of studying classical music. But again, it's not mandatory, because I know a lot of other pianists. A lot of you guys know these pianists as well right here on YouTube. These guys don't have a degree in classical piano, but they can play just as good as I can. So it's not mandatory. but a lot of us go through a lot of the same exercises to get to the technique developing stuff. So yes, there's absolutely a lot you can learn from classical piano. But if your goal is to do the stuff that you see me do on this channel, the gospel stuff, most likely you're not going to learn that stuff from the classical piano person, right? All right. When you say classical pianists don't know accompaniment, they can teach you to have good technique and hand independence. Not necessarily. Classical pianists are brilliant people. In fact, some of the highest IQ people I know are classical pianists. They're very intelligent. Yeah, they can definitely accompany. Now, not all classical pianists can play by ear. A lot of them can't, but also a lot of them can, right? Accompanying, when you say accompaniment, it depends on what you mean, Crystal, because accompanying is just the ability to support someone. That's what accompanying is. A singer is singing, you can accompany them. Whether you're doing it by ear or you're doing it by reading a notes, it's still accompanying. So you need to create a distinction when you say they can't accompany, because that wouldn't be a factual statement. They can. The question is, can all of them play by ear? No. In fact, one of my earlier teachers, brilliant pianist and organist, but she doesn't play by ear. But she could read anything you put in front of her. Doesn't matter how complex, which is a skill in itself. So it's important to make those distinctions. Delano says, how to transform major scales into musical keys. So there's two ways to practice your major scales. You know, you could practice them like, that sounds musical, right? These are just major scales running up and down over 1-6-2-5 progressions. Licks are often born from variations of scales. It's not just one. So if you've seen me in the key of C, and I'm doing something, you might see me do. That's kind of like a mixture of the major scale with an arpeggio with some blue notes. So it's not just one thing. When you see me do, that's arpeggiations or broken chords. And when you see me do, that's the pentatonic scale with a blue note baked in. Now the reason why I'm pointing that out is for you to understand that licks aren't just born from one scale. And so it's better to practice licks specifically rather than say you're going to try to derive the lick from a single scale, because in most cases we don't do it like that. And so you can practice licks. I mean, I have over 1,000 videos right here on YouTube doing all kind of crazy stuff. Pick one from time to time and say, I like that lick Warren does. Slow it down, pick out the notes, practice it. There you go, you learn a lick. But then you're also learning it in the context of how I used it. So you can learn it in similar contexts. Licks are a part of vocabulary building. I know we talk a lot about chords and progressions as vocabulary, but licks are also a part of vocabulary. The little things you can do over specific chords. And you start working on those licks little by little, but again in the context of a progression or a song. And while you're doing all the other things in the background, the scales, the arpeggios, you're building the technique that's going to allow you to then craft a lot of those licks on your own. Ashley said, where can you find gospel piano teachers? Online. All of us are online. I don't know one gospel piano teacher in person. In fact, I don't know any piano teachers in person. Because I've been teaching online since, So I used to teach in person when I lived in Maine, up north. I stopped teaching in person in like 2018. I haven't had a face-to-face student since 2018. I do everything online because it's just more convenient and a lot of people prefer that anyhow. So locally, I wouldn't know what to tell you. I don't know anyone that does that locally, but I'm sure At this point, Ashley, if you're in this live, you're probably familiar with what I do and a tons of other online piano teachers. So your best bet's going to be online. Now, depending on where you live, there might be people in your area that's doing that. So it's based on where you live, but I don't know anyone. I'm down here in Jacksonville, Florida. I don't know anyone in my vicinity that teaches gospel piano in person. Guitar Tube says, been following you. Oh, thank you, brother. Aikozu, hopefully I'm saying that correctly, says, I know progressions in all 12 keys, but freezes up when trying to improvise or improvise melody. What's usually the approach to keep things interesting when you get stuck? I just keep it going. You get stuck, what comes next? And you go to that. That's it. You don't stop playing. But remember that playing progressions and improvising over progressions are two different sets of skills. And it all ties back to how you practice. So if you've only practiced your chords like that, if this is all you do with your chords, then there's no way you're going to be able to just move from that to those are two separate skills and has to be practiced that way. So if you desire to play the second way, then you have to start practicing that the same way you practiced the first one. Start figuring out how to add basic rhythms to your progressions. Over at pianistswithwarren.com, I have a bunch of rhythm chords courses that teach you basic progressions with rhythms in all 12 keys. And apart from that, I have dozens and dozens of songs where you get to see how I'm playing these chords with rhythms. And again, you practice them slowly till you get to the point where you can do more and more and more. But we can't just jump from, I've been practicing blocked chords all this time, now I want to start doing improvisation over the chords. We can't just make that leap. It's a gradual transition into that style. So the first start with, how do I start to add rhythms to these block chords? And you need to do it strategically in a simple way. Again, pianistswithwarren.com has a ton of this stuff already there. And you can find a lot of great resources right here on my YouTube channel as well. I want classical knowledge to mix my playing. Absolutely. Like I said, nothing is wrong with learning classical piano, studying from classical pianists. You just want to know what is it you're trying to achieve. And like I said, being young when I was starting out at 19, if I had the knowledge that I have now, and by knowledge I mean just how to be able to project goals. If I had that skill at 19, I would have been much further ahead musically. I didn't. I was just learning things and chasing rabbit holes and following people because it looked cool. But I never once stopped to ask myself, what do I want? And what is it that I am trying to accomplish? Because we have a limited amount of time, and especially the older you get, you know, if you got a full-time job and you got kids and all these responsibilities, you have a limited amount of time. And so you want to make sure that you're getting the most out of the little time you have to dedicate to music that's aligned with your goal. So this is the exercise for all of you in here right now. Think about this for the rest of the day when we end this live. Where do I want to be in 5 years musically? It's very important to laser focus on that. Don't just say, I want to be good. That's not clear enough. Be specific. If I ask you, how much money do you want to have in your bank account in 5 years? You'd give me a specific answer, right? You'd say, I don't know, $100,000, $50,000, $20,000, $1 million. Now, obviously, you want to be realistic. But you'd be able to put a number to that if I ask you that question. How much money you want to have in your bank account in 5 years? Now, it's the same thing if I ask you, where do you want to be in 5 years with your piano playing? Saying I'm good is not good enough. You want to be specific. I want to be able to play in all 12 keys. I want to be able to play at least 25 songs, right? I want to be able to play this genre of music this well. You need to start naming things, and then you reverse engineer. What are the things do I need to start doing today that will allow me to achieve that goal that I just write out? And like I said, when I just started out, I never thought about that. The only thing I knew is I wanted a degree in music, and that was it. But if I knew back then that my desire, my true desire, wasn't with classical piano, but with playing gospel and some jazzy style. And I like to fuse those together, gospel, jazz, because they share so much in common in terms of the chords we use, the licks. If I had known that's where my true desire lies, I would have taken more classes and courses in that field. And I probably would have transitioned out of the classical piano program earlier. Now, do I regret my path? No, because I still learned a lot. But again, hindsight's 2020. Had I known what I know now, I probably would have made some different changes then. And so for a lot of you who want to improve, it's important to think about realistically, where do I want to be in 1 year from now? Where do I want to be in 2 years from now? What is it I want to be able to do? And then you really need to say, how do I get there? What are the things I need to do? And this is where a lot of people break down. It's easy for them to say, hey, I want to be able to do X, Y, and Z in 2 years. But then they stop there. They don't say, what do I need to do today? And then be willing to do it. And the willing part is the practice part. And that's where people start finding excuses. I don't got the time. And I tell people, listen, if you only got 10 minutes a day, that's enough. 10 minutes a day for a week is 70 minutes, an hour and 10 minutes, right? An hour and 10 minutes, that's 220 minutes every 2 weeks. That's 440 minutes every month. If you have 10 minutes a day. How many of you are going to tell me that you can't find 10 minutes a day to practice? So people look at it as, if I can't find an hour, I'm just not going to do nothing. And then a year passes and you just haven't done anything. And you justify that by saying, but I just don't have the time. But you got to make time. Time is not something that's given. You create it. And so that's another thing that I wish I knew, that these little increments of time adds up. Because I too used to make these elaborate claims that I just don't have the time and blah, 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 blah. I wasted a lot of time on a lot of unnecessary things because if I couldn't find this block of time, then I just didn't do what needed to be done. And I've been on YouTube. A lot of you have been following me for years. I've been on YouTube since 2014. And I've been running Piano Lesson with Warren since 2017. And over the years, I've seen a lot of people just not improve because of this time excuse that they keep making. You don't need a lot of time. In fact, I'm willing to argue that trying to find an hour every day to practice is counterintuitive because it pushes a lot of pressure on you, right? Instead, don't think about hours. Just think about, can I find 5 minutes here, 10 minutes here? And that's why it's important to have a teacher, whether online or offline. Have a study plan. Because if you only have 10 minutes, it's not a lot of time. But if you have 10 minutes of focused practicing, it's a lot of time. Imagine I tell you, hey, for 10 minutes, give me push-ups. You'd be like, are you out of your mind? You know how long 10 minutes is? Why? Because that's a defined skill, a defined activity that you can measure. 10 minutes of push-up? There's no way, right? But when I say 10 minutes of practice, people kind of shrug it off because they're like, that's not enough time. Well, that's because they don't know what to focus on. But if you know exactly what to focus on for that 10 minutes, then 10 minutes is a lot of time. And so that's why I program like my practice path, where everything is laid out for you with the objective, what to achieve. You can sit down for 10 minutes and say, all right, I'm working on chords today. This is the lesson. That's the progression. That's the objective. Go. Then you start able to make massive strides because everything is laid out. You don't have to guess. And that's where a lot of people get frustrated because they sit at the piano and they kind of don't know, what's my objective? What am I trying to achieve right now within this 10 minutes? And so you kind of lose track of things and you do that every day for 2 years and you realize you haven't made any progress and you say, well, I tried, but did you? If you wander out into the wilderness without knowing how you got there or a way to get back, absolutely you'll get lost in that wilderness and nobody will find you. But if you have a map that showed you the exact path you take to get into the wilderness and then how to get out, then it's no problem. It's the same thing with music. Each time you sit down at the piano, you need to have a goal, you need to have an objective. What is it I'm trying to achieve and accomplish within this 10 minutes? And if you can't answer that every time you sit at the piano, most likely you're going to be wasting that 10 minutes. Sitting down and regurgitating what you already know is not practicing. And that doesn't help you to move the needle. Let's see if I could take a few more questions here. Derek says, I realized playing a diminished scale beginning on the melody note produces some cool inversions. What would you say about that? I have never tested this theory, depending on the song, depending on how you're utilizing the diminished scale, but the diminished scale is a symmetric scale, right? When you have symmetry scale, they usually provide cool stuff, right? Because they kind of loop on themselves. Kind of like if we take a fully diminished chord, diminished 7 chord, we call this a symmetric chord because it's built on all minor thirds. So when you invert them, you're just getting different variations of the diminished chord, right? So with the diminished scale, maybe it's a very specific situation you've outlined. I don't know if that would be something that applies to many songs. So we'd need to know the context in which you're referencing. I know you study, I think Bo says, I know you studied at Edna Manley. Roger always tell me about you. I'm a blind musician who currently attend Edna Manley, but I struggle with voice leading, although I am very good at theory. Yes, Roger Williams was my piano teacher at Edna Manley College. That's wonderful that you're at Edna Manley. Struggle with voice leading. I don't know who are the piano teachers. Who are the piano teachers at Edna Manley right now, outside of Roger Williams? I know Anne McNamee retired, but I don't know who else is there. If you drop the names of the people who are currently there, I'll probably recognize them, and I would tell you which one would be able to help you the best with that kind of stuff. As it relates to voice leading. Which are your favorite chords that you use the most, specifically for gospel worship, like new or modern style? Remember that songs comes already with chords, right? So I'm not the one adding chords to the songs. Songs come already with the chords, right? Kind of like when you buy a toy and the toy come assembled. You don't have to assemble it, so that part's already solved. So when you ask what are my favorite chords for worship songs, I don't have any because the songs usually come with the chords. All I do is determine how I play the chords rhythmically, and then I might throw some passing chords in there. That's it. Outside of that, I can't specifically say I have any favorite chords or progressions because I like chords, I like how they sound, I like progressions, and if the song isn't that interesting to me, I make it more interesting by adding more chords to it in the form of passing chords, use of inversions, and so on. Abo says, do you facilitate private classes through my membership program at Piano Lessons with Warren? Yes, I do. But the reason why I make it so that I only do private lessons with people who are already in my program is because I already have so much laid out there. It doesn't make sense for me to then recreate the wheel through private classes. So I have those private classes as like add-ons for people who are already going through my program. So if I need to reference a course, they would already have access to it. If I need to reference some PDF and resources, right, it's tied in. Because if I just meet with anyone online, then I have to spend a lot of time figuring out what they know. Then I'll need to write them a personalized study plan. All of that stuff I've already created inside of Piano Lessons with Warren. So I usually let people go through that first. And then if they need more help, more specialized coaching, then they get to meet with me one-to-one. And I find that makes more sense. The lessons progress a lot smoother that way. I've been playing piano for 4 years. Could you elaborate on what you mean by gospel piano? It's just a style, right? So people talk about jazz piano. When we're talking about jazz piano, we're talking about jazz music. Piano music that accompanies jazz. Jazz piano. So when we talk about gospel piano, we're talking about the style of piano playing that accompany gospel music, right? Now it's important to note that there's a distinction between contemporary Christian music and gospel music. Contemporary Christian music is like your Hillsong, your Elevation Worship, right? Your Bethel music. Those type of music is contemporary Christian music. When we talk about gospel music, we're talking about a specific sound that is more common in the southern United States when people talk about black gospel. And it usually also have a bluesy, jazzy undertone, right? So when you hear people say, I'm a soldier in the army of the Lord, I'm a soldier in the army, I'm a soldier in the army of the Lord, I'm a soldier, the army. When you hear that bluesy, jazzy style of playing in gospel music, that's what we refer to as gospel piano. Now, that particular style of playing would be traditional gospel piano, or what people refer to as old school gospel piano. And then you have sort of modern gospel piano that has a little bit more R&B soul style layered in, like never would have made it, never would have made it without you, I would have lost it all, but now I see you were there for me, and I can say. So that's a more modern gospel style. Fred Hammond never would have made it, and Kirk Franklin, Travis Green, even Andre Crouch, though he's passed, Richard Smallwood, although he recently passed as well. All those guys, would be considered modern gospel artists as well. Some of them started off earlier, like, Richard Smallwood and Andre Crouch in the early, 70s, 80s. So they were doing a lot of that old school stuff. But that's really what gospel music is. That's the distinction. It's a particular sound that it was born out of African American religious music, gospel music. I can take a few more questions. I've been playing, okay, I did answer that one. Found you in 2018, you have changed the way I teach Suzuki and Yamaha method. I now combine the need for improvisation. That's wonderful, that's wonderful. I love to hear that, love that. Gospel is a type of dominant vocals, strong harmony, and syncopated rhythms, non-secular. The channel helps secular expression as well. Absolutely, that's a good summary. Yvonne says, what's the best way to play seventh chords? Yvonne, is this the Yvonne from my program? Because I know there's a person in my program named Yvonne. There is no one way that I would say is the best way to play seventh chords. Because again, I like to think about, when it comes to the use of chords, first, context. That's the first thing. The context is going to determine the best way, right? And so that's important. That said, in my program, the way I teach seventh chords, or the way I introduce students to seventh chord, is based on a particular voicing. This method. So if you're new to seventh chord, you're trying to figure out how I can start practice seven chords, I think this would be one of the better methods. Why? It kind of works in multiple keys, in multiple songs. So look at this particular voicing. Root, fifth, and 7 in the left. I'm playing a C major 7 chord, and just the first inversion triad on the right. And whatever chord you're going to, you can use this particular voicing. So that's where I would recommend you start, Yvonne. And over at pianistswithwarren.com, I show you how to do these in the form of progressions in all 12 keys. Because again, the way we get good at this stuff is through muscle memory. And the way our muscle memory get good is through repetitive practicing across various progressions in various keys using the same pattern, the same voicing. Great question. Lucas says, when you learn a new song, do you always learn the melody of the song? Do you always shape your chords with the melody on top? I would say yes. In fact, before you learn a new song, you want to be able to sing that song as well. Not saying like the soloist, but you need to know the melody well enough to where you can hum it to yourself. The melody is the guide. If you don't know the melody, you will struggle to learn the song. You will struggle to remember the chords to the song because you don't know the melody. So when I have to play a new song for church, first thing I do, before even touching the keyboard, I spend 2 days just listening to the song while I'm driving, while I'm doing chores around the house. I'm internalizing the melody and the structure of the song. Every song that I play well is because I also know the melody. You guys just see me demonstrate it. I'm able to just pick a song and start singing it. So I learn every song that way, not just chords. I learn how to sing it. I might not learn all the right lyrics, but the melody, I got to know the melody. The melody is your guide. Now from there, I've learned to pick out the melody on the piano. I was just playing Never Would Have Made It. So. Right? So every song I learn the melody. Now, do you need to like painstakingly go through the entire song figuring out the melody? No. But it's good to kind of be aware of where the melody is. Do I always voice to the melody? No. But again, if you're new to exploring and experimenting, a good safe bet is always to voice to the melody. Now, the reason why you don't want to sit there and play the melody all the time, because then you don't want to sound like you're playing a hymn. In hymns, we generally play the melody, right? But when you're accompanying a singer, soloist, or a congregation, you don't want to just be banging out that melody. It sounds like you're playing a hymn, and it takes away. Part of an accompaniment is you're supporting the melody. When you start playing the melody, then you're competing with the soloist or with the congregation. So you don't play the melody when you're accompanying. You play the melody when you're doing solo piano, Like if you're doing some talk music, if you're doing some prayerful music, and you're doing like, welcome into this place. Welcome. So if you're doing something solo piano where you're playing prayerfully, or for talk music, then you can play the melody. But outside of that, you kind of want to stay away from the melody because you want to play a more supportive role where you're playing chords with a little bit of embellishment around that melody. Now, it's easier said than done, right? But mentally, that's how you want to think about it. But yeah, you got to want to learn that melody every time you play. Yeah, so Yvonne, you say, yes, this is Yvonne from the program. So Yvonne, we already got a lot of course that covers this stuff already. The reason why I ask you, because I wanted to know if you're a part of the program, then I would just recommend you go there. We already have a lot of courses on 7th chords. That's where I would recommend you start. How do you practice to reach at that level? And this from James. Well, if you're referencing my level, it's a little bit different than the average person, right? And the reason why I said that is, you notice everybody who plays at my level, we pretty much do this full time. Meaning part of why we're so good is because we dedicate our lives to music. I've been playing music now for 22 years. It's all I know. My last 22 years of my life has been dedicated to playing music, studying music, practicing music. I've played in many bands across the country, professionally, putting hours and hours and hours into practicing. So really what you're seeing here, James, is just my life work of me playing. Now, can you get to this level even without making it a career? Yes. The point I'm making is it's going to take a lot of time and it's going to take serious dedication. That's really what it is. It's time and dedication. Now, also, it's important to know that the bulk of the work I put in within the first 10 years of me learning music. So all the technique stuff that you hear me guys that I've been talking about, the first 5 years of my piano journey was dedicated to building that foundation, learning all the scales, the chords, building on my technique and my speed, right? And so the last 10 years has just been me coasting. I've built up all my technique, chords and everything 15 years ago. Everything I've been doing since is really now focused around how do I sound as good as I can without more chords? How can I now make my licks? How can I place those licks at the right place at the right time with the right rhythm, with the right texture, right? So for me, it's no longer baking the cake. It's about how we can make sure that this cake comes out the oven at just the perfect temperature, cooked to perfection, right? So that's what a lot of my practicing now is about. It's about really making music because I don't have to think about chords anymore, scales, fingering. All that stuff's been shed over a decade ago. A lot of you might be in that stage where you have to physically think about what comes next and what fingering you're going to use, and that's okay. I was there as well. You have to go through that part. But what awaits you on the other side, after you know all your scales, your chords, your fingering, you know how to use every passing chords out there, then your goal becomes, how do I use that to paint the best painting I can? It becomes about sharpening those skills now, because there's endless variations of what you can do with those. So to answer your question, James, how do I practice to reach this level? It's an accumulation of daily, weekly, and yearly practicing, shooting for goals. But your first step should be get beyond the theory. If you have to think about what chords you got to play, how you're going to play the chord, and what scale you're going to run on, if you have to physically think about those things, I mean, we want to get past that stage to where everything just flows out of you. Then we can talk about how we're going to shape that stuff. So for a lot of you, you still need to do work on technique and chords. You're still strengthening that foundation, and that's okay. I would prefer you guys spend all the time strengthening that foundation rather than trying to skip it, because you're going to have to eventually go back and strengthen it. So you might as well just do it now. So yeah, my first 4 years in college was just me strengthening. So even though I graduated with a degree, there's still so much I couldn't do. But by then I had a good enough foundation to start building on. And that's all I've been doing for the last 15 years, is building that foundation. John Williams says, oh, Kieran O'Connor. I know Kieran O'Connor. Kieran O'Connor, Stephen Senior. I don't know if I know Stephen. I think his name is, but I apply as a bassy, and I realize I love the piano. Kieran O'Connor. When I was in college, I think Kieran was a piano major. I don't know if Kieran, in my remember I left Jamaica 16 years ago. So I don't know what Kieran has been doing since, but Admin and Andre Admin, is Andre Admin still a piano teacher there? When I was there, he was good. He was a teacher there back then too. Who is teaching jazz there now? Who's teaching jazz there? Let me know who's teaching jazz, because when it comes to voicing and stuff, you really want to be looking towards the jazz teachers. It's possible, therefore, we call it a major ninth. I'm not sure if that question was for me. Greetings from Guatemala, Professor. Thank you. All right, I can take one more question and then we got to wrap it up. I don't see any other questions. Question about how long it takes to reach the advanced level. I would like to ask how long it takes for the musical ear to develop, because I am at a point where my hands are further than my ears. So that just means you need to spend more time doing ear training activities so your ears can catch up. For a long time, that was me too. My hands were way ahead of my ears because I was classically trained. So a lot of my time spent was focusing on this and reading music. So I never did a lot of ear stuff. So a lot of these chords that you see me do now, I couldn't do back then, even though my technique was good. So then I realized I just need to spend a lot more time on my ear. And how did I do that? I started transcribing songs. That's it. Sitting down, transcribing songs. It's a slow process, but that's the best way to start developing your ear if you realize your hands are further than your ear. Now, the other question you ask is how long does it take to get to advanced? I don't know. Because when you think about it really, what does it mean to be advanced? Even though I've been playing and teaching for 20 plus years, I still can't really put a label on what advanced means. And the reason why it's hard is because all our skills that is needed to be a really good player doesn't develop at the same pace or at the same rate, right? So it also depending on how you spend your time and the things you focus on more, right? Think of it as a bodybuilder. If you go in the gym and all you spend most of your time is on weights that build up your arm, your arm muscles are going to grow faster than the rest of your body. We've all seen it. These guys with those big tops, skinny legs, because they don't like to do leg exercises. So they might be strong in their torso, but they're weak in their legs. It's the same thing with piano playing. If you spend most of your time on just practicing chords and chord progressions, you're going to be good at that, and that skill's going to improve faster. But if you also don't spend time practicing scales, that means technique-wise, you're going to be a little sloppy because you don't spend a lot of time there. Then if you never study theory, that's going to lag as well. If you don't do ear training, that's going to lag, right? So we talk about those category methods: chords, ear training, scales, theory, songs. The ideal player needs to be very good across all those categories. And that's what we refer to as advanced. Someone with a very good developed ear, good developed chordal vocabulary, good developed song vocabulary. They know a lot of songs, good technique, right? We need to be good across all these categories. And that's really what we call an advanced player. But if we're not addressing all of those skill sets, we're going to be a little bit lopsided. So we could be playing for 6 years, but we're not quite advanced because we're only really good in one area and we're lacking in the others. So instead of thinking about how long it's going to take me to get to advanced, think about the methods we just talked about: chords, theory, scales, and say how good I am in each of these categories. Pinpoint the weak ones and work on them. And that's what's going to allow you to get to advance, whatever that is. Because it's not like a threshold that you cross. Now I'm into advanced territory. Right? I consider myself advanced. But, Corey Henry is also advanced. But we're not in the same category at all. He's light years ahead of me. So you realize advanced is a huge category and there's levels to it, right? So you'll just wake up one day and realize that I can do all these things and I can do them very well. Then you'd be an advanced player. How long does it take to get there? I don't know. Because I could tell you, even after I graduated the first time with my degree, I wasn't really that advanced. Yeah, I could play way better than the average person, but there's still so many things I know now that I didn't know then. So maybe I was advanced then, but now I'm way more advanced. So there's a lot of factors that goes into this. All right. But guys, I'm going to stop here for today. Thank you for hanging out with me. Again, I just want to bring on your radar, for those who came into the live a little bit late, Gospel Piano Charts. It's an app recently released, and it's really designed to help you learn gospel piano by ear. It's no longer on the screen, but I guess I could show you right here. This app is available on mobile devices. It has hundreds of songs, and it's one of the best way to learn chords, learn gospel songs. They're synced to YouTube videos. You can transpose, transcribe, slow down, playback, all of this stuff. For those who have been in the live this long, you realize that everything ties back to songs, right? Because that's where we get to experiment and explore. If you're not learning enough songs because you don't have chord charts, then you want to get gospel piano charts, right? It's over at gospelpianocharts.com. Check it out. Let me know what you think. And for those of you who want to go even further beyond that with my structured program, so you know what to practice, when to move on, that structured learning. So if you can only find 10 minutes a day, that would be the best program for you to follow, because it helps to sharpen all the different skills we talk about. All right, guys. But again, thank you for the wonderful questions. This is awesome as always. We're going to keep doing these lives every other month or so based on my availability. Once I end the live, the video is going to be available for playback. So if you have additional questions, you can post them below the video then. I will jump in and answer there as well. All right, so until then, have a blessed week and we'll talk soon.